Francis Ngannou has completely fleeced the PFL. Francis Ngannou is back in the headlines again as his PFL contract is ending, and in his recent Ariel Helwani interview, he was thinking of becoming a free agent again and finally trying to go for Jon Jones at the UFC White House event, which I highly doubt happens because one, Dana White does not trust Jon Jones anymore at the White House card, and also he recently said that Francis Ngannou put hands on him over a post-fight bonus, which Francis Ngannou in this interview doesn't even outright deny. But with Francis's PFL contract ending soon and his desire to leave already and try to fight at the UFC White House event, it got me thinking about Francis's tenure or lack thereof in the PFL in the last 2-ish years. In the time the PFL had Francis, he's fought a total of 1 time, brought in abysmal pay-per-view numbers, didn't show up to the PFL Africa event, which was something the PFL went out of their way to do for him, and fleeced the PFL in general for millions of dollars. Let's look back at this PFL Francis Ngannou experiment and look at just how bad it actually was. Let's go back to the beginning. It's 2022 and Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones hype is through the roof. Francis Ngannou was coming off of a win in title defense against Cyril Gane, where he surprisingly got this done through his wrestling and proved to the world he was truly the baddest man on the planet. But in the aftermath of this fight, he injured his MCL and ACL. During his recovery, Jon Jones was getting big, like really big, trying to match the size of Francis and return to the UFC as a heavyweight to achieve true GOAT status and become 2-division champion. But before we could see this legendary super fight happen, Francis Ngannou would shock the world and make a move no one saw coming. In a crazy turn of events, Francis Ngannou would announce that he would be leaving the UFC and would be signing to the PFL. He cited a lot of gripes in his new UFC contract. For one, he felt like he wasn't free in his new UFC contract as he couldn't do things like go into boxing. He also wanted to get health insurance for the bottom fighters and couldn't get that either. He wanted sponsorships for those guys too and got shot down, and felt like instead of trying to work with him on his requests, he just got slapped in the face with more money. This led to signing with the PFL, who pretty much bended the knee to Francis Ngannou and got him everything plus more. The PFL got him millions of dollars. He became the chairman of PFL Africa, a newly created regional league for African fighters. He created the PFL's new pay-per-view super fight division, which was a 50-50 revenue split between fighter and promotion. He guaranteed his opponents $2 million, and they let him have the freedom to fight professional boxing matches, which of course led to his fights against Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. He literally got everything he wanted, and it looked game-changing. I remember a lot of us were unsure if leaving the UFC in the height of his career was the correct move, especially with a looming super fight probably underway, and reportedly he walked away from $8 million, but he proved us wrong. He got pretty much everything he wanted by leaving the UFC. And at the time, it looked like a good move for the PFL. As a new MMA organization, it's really hard to compete against the UFC. They literally have all the biggest names and the best talent in the MMA world, and everyone wants to see the best fight the best. With the PFL signing a huge name in Francis, that was supposed to set the precedent that MMA fighters in their prime don't just have to join the UFC, they can go to the PFL as well and make way more money. This was starting to look like actual competition for the UFC. But before Francis Ngannou was going to change the MMA world, he had to chase the bag first and go into boxing. When Francis finally got the green light from a fighting organization to be able to box professionally, he immediately went to the top to fight arguably the best boxing heavyweight at the time in Tyson Fury. And he gave us an unbelievable moment when he dropped Fury in the third and made the fight come down to a split decision. He would again try his luck with boxing by facing another giant British heavyweight name in Anthony Joshua, but did not do as hot as he got knocked out bad in the second round. But the PFL kind of got what they wanted. Francis Ngannou, win or lose, created 2 giant moments in the combat sports world and presumably brought a lot of eyes to these boxing matches, and most importantly, back to his name. And with these 2 moments, it looked like Francis's name was going to blow up again, right? And I'm assuming the PFL made some money from the boxing matches because they helped promote Francis. Well, the pay-per-view numbers say otherwise. Reportedly, the Fury and Ngannou fight did abysmal numbers, with most sources claiming they only sold 67,000 pay-per-views in the US. Sure, this doesn't count the numbers it did overseas, specifically the UK, where Tyson Fury is a giant star, but I highly doubt those numbers would have made up for the $10 million Francis was paid and the $50 million Tyson Fury was paid for in this fight. And then the Anthony Joshua fight, even worse, with most reports saying the pay-per-views were only about 4,600 on traditional television pay-per-views. Granted, of the 67,000 pay-per-view buys that came from the Francis Ngannou Tyson Fury fight, 11,500 were traditional television pay-per-view buys. I don't really know why I couldn't find total pay-per-views across all platforms like DAZN.
But considering we can't find a number on DAZN numbers or anywhere else you can get pay-per-views, probably means those numbers were really bad as well. Because usually when events do really good in terms of pay-per-view buys, promoters are really eager to tell everybody that it did millions and millions of pay-per-view buys. But since we can't find a number, it probably did bad.
And you know the kicker? Francis was paid even more money. Twice as much, in fact, with a $20 million guaranteed fight purse by bringing in less than half of the pay-per-view buys than last time. So the PFL probably got chump change from any money generated from those two boxing events, if they got money at all. And if the pay-per-view buy numbers were any indicator of how many people were tuning into Francis Ngannou fights, well, their pay-per-view buys for his MMA return were going to be bad too. Francis Ngannou would finally make his return at the end of 2024 and fight Renan Ferreira. And though Francis would finish Ferreira, this fight generated next to nothing in terms of pay-per-view buys. On ESPN Plus, which was the main pay-per-view platform, it was reported that this fight only did about 10,000 pay-per-view buys. Again, despite the low pay-per-view buy numbers, Francis was paid a guaranteed $8 million, and because of Francis's contract, Ferreira took home a guaranteed $2 million. Francis, on paper, is one of the worst financial decisions you can make as a fighting promoter. Between these three fights, Francis Ngannou took home $38 million in guaranteed money while only raking in less than 100,000 pay-per-view buys total. Again, these are only the numbers I could find online, and they don't account for total pay-per-view numbers across all platforms, but I highly doubt that any number from those other platforms would have made up for the $38 million Ngannou made. And Francis Ngannou continues to disappoint, and this time with something that he can directly control. A big thing Francis was able to negotiate with his contract with the PFL was the creation of the PFL African League, which was supposed to promote the MMA talent of Africa. And well, when the PFL kept their end of the bargain, Francis was nowhere to be found. This guy made the PFL create another league of its own, and when it was time to simply show up and help promote it, he didn't come through. When PFL founder Don Davis was asked to respond to why Francis Ngannou didn't show up, he said, "You have to ask Francis. I'm not going to hide it. I expected him at Grand West Arena. This is part of his vision so that all those fighters out there don't have to leave the continent like he did. I'm direct and say what I think. I'm disappointed." Francis, in response to the criticism of him not showing up to the PFL Africa event, said, "If you want to know what exactly is the reason why I wasn't there, I wasn't very okay with the first PFL Africa event seeming to be like an undercard." Quoting, "We worked a lot for that, for the launch of PFL Africa. I hope the PFL Africa debut would have at least had its glory, its moment. That wasn't my decision. I wasn't down for it, but I expressed my feelings to them." Which is like, dude, come on. This league has given you millions of dollars, practically all the freedom in the world, and created a damn league for you. Even if it wasn't up to your standards, at least be a professional and show up to the first event. And with this, on top of everything Dana White has said, I truly believe he might be the hardest guy to work with. And now, he's pretty much done with the PFL. In a recent Ariel Helwani interview, Francis said that he will try to get on the UFC White House card and fight Jon Jones after his PFL contract is over. And every time Helwani tried to ask him more details about his PFL contract ending, he just kept saying, "I don't know," and literally was not giving a straight answer, meaning there are definitely contractual negotiations happening right now, which is why he just kept beating around the bush when his contract was brought up. But from the looks of it, I don't think Francis is all too excited about potentially coming back to the PFL. He accepted the call out of Vadim Nevkov, who just beat Renan Ferreira for the belt, and by the looks of it, the CEO of the PFL has something special in the works for Francis's last fight, but honestly, who cares? Francis's last fight in the PFL is not something I think would necessarily sell or has a lot of people hyped for. He didn't really leave a legacy in the league. If anything, he left a trail of fire and negative ROI in this promotion. This has been one of the worst deals in combat sports history, and the PFL unfortunately lost a ton of money with Francis Ngannou. He fought only one time, and I don't think he brought the hype to the PFL like everybody wanted. I don't see casual fans going, "Oh shoot, Francis Ngannou is fighting in the PFL. Oh, let me check out the other fighters in the PFL as well." This has been a disaster for the PFL, and I don't know how they recover, but fortunately for Francis, he made a ton of money. Anyways, what do you guys think about Francis Ngannou's tenure in the PFL? Will the PFL recover or even stay afloat as a legitimate MMA organization? What does Francis Ngannou do next? Are you even hyped to see him fight anybody? Maybe he fights John Jones in the UFC White House card, I highly doubt that's going to happen. But anyways, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on Francis Ngannou and everything else. And thank you guys for watching. Peace.